What up? What is up, friends? I literally just realized I'm out of coffee, but hey, man, life is good. I am a very lucky individual, so I can't complain if I'm just out of coffee. I was about to go. I'm working on some cool Bellator stuff. Just got off the phone with my people at Bellator. Probably, not probably. I just love working. I was going to say it's my favorite, but it's all my favorite. Commentating bare knuckles is my favorite. Commentating Letway and Myanmar is my favorite. It's all my favorite, but I love the team at Bellator. And so we were talking about working on, I wanted to break down a couple of Ben Askren moments because Ben Askren is being discussed in the world right now. And then I thought, you know what? Let's chat about this. Let's chat about this just the way I like to talk. I don't have to talk in narratives. I don't have to talk about it in any way that everybody else does. I just want to take the fight of Ben Askren and Jake Paul and look at it with some of the details in which I like to look at things. And often I'm always a little curious that how people look at things, but I also realize that we look at things based on what we have, the filters that we have. So I want to just offer you my filters, offer you my perspective of a fight like Ben Askren versus Jake Paul from my perspective. Now, what's my perspective? I analyze martial arts. I fight. I don't fight any full contact fighting anymore, but I had 9 professional mixed martial arts fights of my own. I still train every day. I live the life of a practicing martial artist. And so I think I probably, and as somebody who has the gift of being able to literally sit and talk for a living, I analyze things maybe in a slightly different way. It's important to me to not just play along with whatever the narratives are. I'm always looking for information. So what do we know about this fight when we just look at it as a fight? What is this? I'm not talking about beefs and the way people talk shit about each other's wives or whatever. That's not my territory. Just a fight. Ben Askren, Jake Paul. What do we know? What do we think we know? What do we not know? So first off, myself and anybody else who consumes a lot of fighting have seen many, many hundreds of fights between very athletic guys who are novice boxers. We've seen hundreds of them. This is not an uncommon occurrence. In fact, if you go to any club boxing show in Toronto or whatever city you live in, or you watch any boxing show on TV, you will see undercard fighters. Maybe a 2-0 guy versus an 0-0 guy. Jake Paul is 2-0. I will briefly stop there. People would say, oh, he hasn't fought anybody. Most 2-0 people have not really fought any high-level fighters, right? That's what it is to have 2 fights. You have 2 boxing matches. Generally, if you're say, a female fighter, you face a soccer mom and someone who works down the street in a regular job who likes to box at night. You are a young boxer. You have 2 fights. You're going to fight the guy who works at the grocery store and boxes after work. You're going to fight a lawyer who loves boxing and wanted to try it, right? So all fighters, all boxers with 2 pro fights, 2 low-level pro fights, will also have fought nobody. Right? Now, you could not realize you're fighting somebody who's going to be brilliant one day, but in general, you have 2 fights, you fought low-level people. And you're a good athlete. Jake Paul is a good athlete. Very, very fit, probably on, famous people. A lot of them take steroids. Who knows, right? You have personal trainers, whatever. He's been a very fit, large, muscular, athletic young man. And he's a novice boxer. He has trained in the art of boxing for a couple of years. Fairly hard for the last probably 2 years and a little bit before that. That's a novice. It's a novice with 2 fights. Ben Askren, this to me is one of the most interesting aspects when you look at just the aspects of how people perceive it. How people perceive it is people will be like, yeah, well, he's fighting a wrestler with crappy stand-up. That might be a comment that you'll hear from people. So here, we'll take comments from wherever. Please feel free to throw any questions in. Let's not count on Askren. That's a rookie mistake. So very true. Also, how you assessing somebody's skill in something you are not yourself skillful in is a very specialized skill of its own. We all look and go, that guy's a shitty rapper. That guy is a great football player. Sorry, I'm sweaty. These hot lights in my studio. That guy's a great basketball player. Ben Askren's an awesome wrestler. Ben Askren's a terrible boxer, whatever. That's actually, we think we have the ability to make these assessments. We mostly don't. Mostly don't. In fact, very misleading. Assessing Ben Askren's performance striking against Robbie Lawler and deciding how good or bad you believe he is contextually doesn't give you much information. Ben Askren would be a much better boxer than everybody watching here who doesn't have 10 professional boxing matches, and a much worse boxer than everybody who has 50 boxing matches, right? Skill is contextual. So, there's a bit of a flaw here in how we view things. It's like, oh, Ben Askren's got crappy stand-up. Compared to what, right? This is very important. This is probably the root. The thing I was most interested in talking about this is our ability to assess, right? A lot of people will, you know, whether they have a YouTube channel or they work in television, they'll be like, oh, you know, this is going to go this way. I deal with it all the time in my job. It's a fun part of my job. I'll sit there with somebody who watches some amount of combat and they'll say, for sure, this guy's going to win. For this guy just does this. But our ability to assess tricks us. If you think Ben Askren has crappy stand-up, you are comparing it to high-level professional combat athletes who are world champions in combat. It's all contextual. And I'll use this as an example. And I've used this as an example a couple times in the last week. And I'm very careful to explain it. One, I love Max Holloway. I think he's brilliant. I think Max Holloway is absolutely brilliant. But when we talk about his performance against Calvin Kattar, everybody's freaking, oh my God, so many significant strikes, whatever. This is like a virtuoso performance. You know, if a basketball team scored 200 points to somebody else's 60, but it was the best basketball team on their best night against the worst team whose center got injured and the coach wasn't there, nobody would be like, because these things don't exist in a vacuum. Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar was a combination of all of the elements, and how Max performed beautifully, awesomely. Is it better to land 400 punches on somebody or to knock somebody out in a single punch? Which is a better performance, right? That's, you know, it's impossible to define. If I land 100 punches but knock you out in 1 minute, is that better than 400? And we don't know what else to talk about. We react away in predictable ways here at CJFM. True. It's like when we say a quarterback sucks in the NFL. Well, we stand. Yeah, of course. If you say you see a quarterback in the NFL and you're like, that guy, you know, oh look, that guy sucks. That's one of the best quarterbacks on planet Earth. And you can't compare him to the guy down the street who plays football after work. Can't compare him to a grade 10 quarterback. You can't compare who Ben Askren has fought to normal people. The worst stand-up fighter in the UFC knocks out every single person who is a street fighter who fought 3 guys in their hometown. Every single one of them. Because Kattar, I don't know. Somebody here said, isn't it Kattar or Kattar? Hey man, tomato. I wouldn't want to insult a person by intentionally saying their name wrong, but we all pronounce things different. People in England will pronounce it different than some weirdo in Canada talking about fighting. So, but I don't know. If I'm saying it wrong, my apologies to Mr. Kattar. Big respect to logic. So yeah, it's like, you know, it's contextual. So this will, and I don't know who's going to win. Nobody knows who's going to win. Let me tell you this. I talked to my friend, Joey Bagels is his name. Joey Odessa. He is the odds maker who has handled the front odds of all fights since fights have been gambled on. So he sees it all. The greatest bettors, and I mean these guys bet using their own money, risking money, their livelihood, their family's food. The greatest bettors who have bet consistently for 10 years, none of them ever hit over a 10-year period 60%. Correct. The best, doing everything they can, they never hit 60% correct, because these things are not predictable. Who's going to win, Jake Paul or Ben Askren? Well, who do you hate more? And then pick the other guy, right? You know, that's the thing. So Jake Paul, so what we end up with when we go to look at something like this, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not mad at it. Nobody got to watch it. Nobody going to make you watch it. Nobody going to make me watch it. I might feel like watching it on the night. I might not. I'm, somewhat friends with KSI. We got to know each other on the internet. I broke down some stuff. He really likes my work. When he fought Logan Paul, I didn't watch it. And I was working for DAZN at the time. I just did it. Nobody was going to make me. And that's cool. You don't have to watch it either. These guys are just going to go do their thing. I'm happy for Ben Askren. I don't know him a great deal, but he's an interesting guy. He's a very successful combat athlete, and he's got an interesting sense of humor. I'm happy he gets what's probably going to be a big money fight on something interesting that motivates him. Ben's a retired professional fighter. To be able to get paid, let's say $500,000, I don't know, $1 million, I don't know what he gets, to go and do something interesting and fun that is presented at a high level, but the risk, the fight itself is low level, fucking good for Ben Askren. You don't have to watch it. I'm not mad at it, but I'm looking at it for what it is. This is a fight between novice boxers. One of them is young and very athletic, novice boxer, very novice, new. How does boxing skill develop? Preparation, training, learning, repetitive preparation, studying your own process, improvement. Even just, I remember when I lost my first MMA fight and I started working with a boxing coach. I got lit up pretty good in my first fight. And I had been training kickboxing, working with Mark Hominick and Chris Hardesky. I just wanted to get into boxing, and then I fell in love with it. Now, remember at about a year, my coach, Billy Martin, he'd stand at the bag and he'd punch and I'd slip and I'd kind of slip and I always had a good right hand when I trained with. And if Henry Hoof holds pads for me, I hit him and he right away was like, we got a real right hand here. And they all say it, every coach I've ever had. It's just something in the way my body's built. It's nice. Nice to have something. So I would slip, counter. Billy identified that was something useful. Slip, counter, thousands of times. And a year later, just doing it, just following the process. A year later, I'm sparring with Sam Stout, who is a UFC killer, amazing UFC champion. I will preface this by saying what I'm about to say was only one thing, and then he murdered me, and all of his teammates murdered me. I got smashed up consistently, and he would have won 10-7. He would have knocked me out if he felt like it, but we were sparring, so he would have won 10-8, and he decided not to knock me out. He had the freedom to do so. But I remember he threw a jab, and I just slipped and threw a right hand. And I remember after, once my head stopped ringing and my body stopped hurting from him beating the shit out of me, I remember thinking, I did land that one punch, and I didn't think about it. It just happened. How did that happen? And I started to go back and study the process. And then I would be sparring with people, and I'd slip and throw a right hand. It's not a fucking world-beating technique. It doesn't make me any better of a martial artist than I was, but I was obsessed with the process. I could not do that 6 months ago, and now I can. How did that happen? Repetitive practice, training your brain, training your body, controlling all of those things, putting it all together, studying the process, having a good coach. My coach, I still love this guy. Billy Martin is his name. That guy would stand there for hours, over and over. He didn't have to do that. He cared, and he wanted me to be better. That's the process. It takes time. Jake Paul looked pretty good fighting a basketball. Was it a basketball player that he fought? Looked pretty good. But that was not a boxer. That was a very, very low-level novice boxer who's also a good athlete, who had very low-level boxing skills, less than Jake Paul had. Jake Paul had put in more hours of that repetitive practice, deliberate practice, studying his process, repeating till he developed some skills. And he did more than the other guy, and he beat that guy. So that's where he is at and that's where every fighter is. They're at some point down that process of self-improvement and of training themselves. Floyd Mayweather is here on that process, and I'm somewhere he's here, and I'm somewhere around here, and Jake Paul is somewhere around here, and Ben Askren also. Although, again, Ben Askren has crappy stand-up. That's classifications that we use when comparing him to Robbie Lawler. There's no arbitrary score in the world to be able to classify the ability to fight with using only punches of Ben Askren. And when we do, and although I just said that's not possible, here we have others disagree with me. However, the more you will study, the more you will find that Ben doesn't suck at these things. He's actually a high-level athlete. Also, he has literally, now Jake wrestled in high school as well, but literally thousands of combat sports experience, thousands of individual contests of combat sport experience. That matters. Also, this is something, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. I'm not making up anything. I'm not having any breakthroughs here. This is just a normal thought. Really, 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 really important aspect of boxing, of fighting in a boxing environment with 6 or 8 rounds, in this case 8, with this amount of time, with the rules as they are. Very important thing is the skills people use when they are competing in wrestling. Very important skill. Throwing punches. This isn't a game of you throw punches and I throw punches. This is a game of we manage each other in combat, right? If I hold your arms over and over all day long, forever, you get tired and you're muscled and juiced up. You get tired way more than I do. Really important. Really important. Again, I'm just curious about this. This is a very low-level novice boxing match that if they weren't famous, would be on an undercard of a regional local show, but they are famous. So instead, we get to see a novice fight between a guy with 2 fights and 0 professional boxing matches. But the 0 boxing matches guy has a lifetime of combat sports experience. And in combat sport, boxing is not a game of who punches more, better, lands, whatever, offense, defense. Those are just words we use on television. Boxing is managing another human being in combat, and with the priority being to hit him. With one of your primary ways to defeat him being to hit him more than he hits you, harder than he hits you, in ways that hurt him and don't get as hurt. A lot of ways to do that. If I'm Ben Askren, I'll talk to Duke about this. I'm going to text Duke. Duke Rufus is Ben's coach. I'm going to ask him if he'll hang and chat about this with me next week. So we'll get into it. But if I'm Ben Askren, Ben Askren not only won't mind if you boo, he'd be fucking thrilled if you boo. That's his sense of humor. He would find that awesome. Ben Askren would find it amazing if you boo. So he's not just trying to not have that happen or incidentally wondering if, maybe it'll happen. Maybe he'd be happy to make it happen. One way he could do that is just keep tying this guy's arms up. Tie him up, tie him up, tie him up, tie him up. You know what skills you need to tie somebody up? Moving through space, getting a hold of them. Ben's fucking been doing that since he was 6 years old. If I'm training Ben Askren, the whole game is make people boo while I tie this guy up, make him super tired. He's all lit up and juiced up. And I don't know that he takes steroids. Just a lot of famous people who are not tested as professional athletes. Many in Hollywood, many of them do. So that's a possibility. One we would use if we would take this guy. He's all wound up. He's all big. He's feeling the pressure. He has limited experience, very, very, very little combat experience. We're going to tie his ass up over and over again, get the crowd to boo, get him stressed out, close the thing, make him tired, and then, beat him up in rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's what I would do. And that's what Ben Askren will try to do. Right? Like Ben's clinch game is going to be on point. Yeah, we can classify this however we want. Boxing, wrestling, clinching, whatever. There's a collection of skills that people build. All different skills. So wait, are they having a boxing match or a real MMA fight? They're having a boxing match, but a boxing match is just a collection of rules and time and stuff like that. A match, we get confused. It's very easy. It's like we do this with a lot of things in the world. Boxing is many things. It is rules, structures, history, technical things, techniques, but all of those things are different, and you can mix and match them how you please. You can win a boxing match by tying a guy up, getting a few warnings, making him tired, and then dancing around and showing off when he's exhausted. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And if I was Ben Askren, that's how I would try to do it. If I was Ben Askren's friends, teammates, whatever, we'd be doing a lot of that. I'm not the first guy to think of that, and I'm not particularly sharp. This isn't some breakthrough. A lot of times when we do, especially, for me back in the day, for a lot of, this is just how media is done. Often we like to talk, present ourselves as having some idea that other people don't know. This is not a fucking brilliant idea. Of course he's going to do that. Why do I explain that? Because obviously also Ben Askren knows that. So what happens? We begin in our novice boxing match between a fit, young novice boxer and a older, very highly experienced combat sportsman who never boxed before but fought a lot. And in this dynamic, if I'm Jake Paul, I know that's what this guy wants to do, so I prepare for it. So great, prepare for it, you'll stop it. Here's the thing. Again, we're having to contextualize these things because we talk about things in such weird absolutes and we think they're real, right? Is Conor McGregor knew that Dustin Poirier would throw leg kicks, right? He just was worse at preparing for them than Dustin Poirier was at doing them, executing them. He was worse at preparing, didn't do as good a job of preparing to avoid them, defend them, or counter them, or all three, as Dustin Poirier did at doing them. Right? Jake Paul knows that Ben Askren's going to try to tie him up. But what is it? It's in March, so it's like 2 months. 2 months is not going to have you be able to stop a guy who spent his entire lifetime with an urgency, closing distance, and tying Ben up. You could spend 10 months. You could spend 2 years. You're not going to be as good at stopping that as Ben is at doing that. So this will be at play. Probably for a lot of people, this will mean that they'll be that after whoever wins, they'll be like, that fight sucked. I don't know. I guess it depends what you like. And I guess it depends on who you're cheering for. And I guess it depends on who you are. So LW says, I doubt Ben wants any kind of slugfest. Pre-George, he had been pretty successful at protecting his brain. Very, very, very true. Very true. Although he got fucked up by Robbie Lawler too before he got that match, regardless of whatever controversy there was. If Conor was an elite fighter, wouldn't he have been able to make adjustments to stop the leg kicks? I really like your question, and I like it because of this. Yes, you make an adjustment. Oh, okay, I guess that's it. It's over. No, because Poirier makes an adjustment. And then he'll make an adjustment to that. This is what's happening. When we often sit there and we'll talk about it after, we'll be like, oh, he made some adjustments. Adjustments are happening all the time. And eventually, one person's adjustments are slightly move ahead of the other, or it ends the fight. Of course he's made adjustments. He made 17 adjustments that night, and Poirier made 18 or 30 or 40 or just one key one. It's all adjustments. It's all adjustments. It's all information. It's all gathering the information, what's happening. Among the most important elements to that is also even the way you phrase, this is Donnie Brasco, who has been sent smart questions and been great, and I appreciate you, sir, my friend. But even the way you phrase that, and I'm not saying this in any type of judgmental way or any type of negative way. If Conor was an elite fighter, you give away your bias. Now, that doesn't mean you can have your bias. You can hate that guy or want to see him lose. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's fun. It's part of what we do, right? Part of what we do. But it shapes how you see things. Our bias, we all have them. I got fucking bias out the ass. And so does everybody watching this. We all have them. We're humans. But our biases shape how we consume and process our information. Over time, I have zero, or as close to zero as the biased human can have, preference over Poirier or McGregor. I just want to see how their paths intertwine and what happens. So without judgment, of course he makes adjustments. And of course he's an elite fighter. They're all elite fighters. Ben Askren's an elite fighter, And I think, Donnie, I appreciate you, man. I think the difference can come right down to one is an elite fighter and one is an elite famous person who's been boxing for a couple of years. Very fit, very young, very athletic, with a good drive. That's a valuable thing. These guys are, him and his brother and the people who accomplish these things, these guys are driven fucking workers. That's got value, right? Same with 2 months of boxing training that Ben gets versus Jake. Ben's been boxing for 20 years. When I was analyzing Ben Askren, when he fought with Bellator, I talked to Duke all the time. He's been boxing in there against boxers and kickboxers for 15 years. You don't have to have a boxing match. All MMA fighters box. They don't box the same. They box out in different contexts. They box with different purpose. There's a lot of variation. They don't do well against only boxers because those people are highly specialized, often at high levels, but they'll beat up every club boxer, most of them, including Ben Askren. Ben's been boxing for 15, 20 years. Just not at that level, but he's facing a novice. So it's a pretty close fight, pretty even fight, very fair fight. If any, and I credit Jake Paul. Maybe he doesn't know this. Maybe he's not quite able to fully assess this, probably isn't fully, but I give him credit nonetheless. He went from a guy who didn't really box much to a professional athlete who didn't really box much. Now he thinks he's going to a combat athlete who doesn't really box much. He's putting himself at a lot of risk for a difficult fight, and good on him. Finding what you believe is the lowest level, the UFC fighter of a similar weight with a good audience who you believe has the lowest level hands in the game is still a big fucking risk for a novice boxer. It is. It is. It's not a risk for an experienced boxer. It's not a risk for like a high level boxer, but it's a very big risk for a novice. And Jake Paul's a novice. But he's hardworking, he's driven, he's athletic, he's young. He's got a lot of strengths, but he's still a novice boxer. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting fight. I was like, am I going to talk about this? You know, I don't need my voice heard. I don't have to introduce my idea into the ether. That's not what I'm about. Once was, and maybe again one day. And I realize that there's value in for my job and my family when I do that. But I'm on a trip now. I'm on a learning trip. I'm on a see it differently. I'm on a study it, dispel the narratives, ignore the obvious conversation, move past the obvious conflict, and see what else I can learn. And I was like, is there anything in this fight where I can do that, where I can stay true to what I'm interested in and stay true to my own path? And I think there's a lot. There's a lot. We don't get a lot of high-level, high-stress presented novice fights. We do get them strictly young athlete versus, but not at this level of complexity. Again, that doesn't mean it's the best fight. It means the level of complexity. I mean, there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of interesting aspects to it. So it's kind of neat. Will I watch it? I don't know. Like I said, I haven't watched any of his other fights, and I didn't watch his brother's fight against KSI. And KSI, I know a little bit. We chat. We've done some things on social media together, and I didn't watch those ones, so I don't know if I'll watch this one. I like Ben Askren. He's an interesting guy. These guys are both interesting guys. So here we go. I might say amateur versus novice. I mean, Ben Askren is a professional fighter, and regardless of what you think, Jake Paul's a professional fighter. I'll take this and offer you this thought. And when I say I'd like to offer you this, I always think of Chael Sonnen, because he said that to me once years ago. I know he says that a lot, but he said that to me once years ago, and I remember thinking, that's so cool. I like the way like the way you offered that to me, Chad. But I will offer you this. You know, these fights line up interesting. They do. And these two guys, typically, this fight could be seen many times, just not with the fame. The only major difference between this and 1,000 other 2-0 versus 0-0 MMA guy fights is the fame. The fame, the element of popularity, the buzz, the conflict, all that kind of shit. I'm not super interested in that. I don't really care about it. It doesn't bug me. It doesn't provoke me. I don't get jazzed up into it. I tend to avoid most news sites, even fight news sites, because I find news itself is not something I dig. I find it modern news to have a purpose of mostly just trying to create debate, engagement, arguments, conflict, controversy, fear, anxiety, anger. Like I don't want to be involved in all that. But yeah, so this is a cool question. The outcome of the fight change if it was a Bkfc fight. So first of all, really neat that you call it Bkfc. That means that's a credit to that league, which has reached you in such a way. I work for BKB, which is a league in England that I'm just stoked about. But I haven't noticed that, good on them. Good on them that they've reached you in such a way that when rather than write bare knuckle or BKB, that you reference the league. So good for them. But yes, it would be different. Yeah, it would. It would. I think again, that might add more stress to Jake Paul than it would to Ben Askren. Just the psychological stress, because it's further from the two things Ben did, and not as much no further really from all of the different fighting. Oh, sorry, that Jake did. It's, you know, bare knuckle changes things. I've seen it. I commentate it in England. BKB, the next one's in March. I'll be commentating it live, probably from right here, but maybe I'll be in England. I don't know. But I've seen it up close, and I've seen MMA fighters, I've seen boxers, I've seen kickboxers, Muay Thai fighters. When they go bare knuckle, it does change things, and it adds a different stress, and it raises the heart, and really what is required is that serenity to be able to like not succumb to the pressure. Experience gives you that. Ben Askren has more combat experience. He fought Douglas Lima. He fought Robbie Lawler, right? Like, yes, there's only 2 weapons, but he fought those people in his underpants in a cage in front of hundreds of thousands of people on television, right? That's powerful. Great question, though. I really appreciate it. Jake has never been hit. Nobody knows how he will react. He has been hit. We just haven't seen it on TV. This is probably not Khabib, but hello, brother. I do love Khabib. If it is Khabib, hello, brother. But I don't think it probably is. But still cool nonetheless. Maybe also there are more Khabibs. Yes, Jake's been hit. Jake has been hit. And because he's in the gym, he's sparring. He's not crazy. He's, you know, you have to fight if you're going to fight. You have to, right? We just haven't seen it. What we haven't seen. This is the limitation in our ability to make any kind of forecasts about fighting. Is 99% of it we don't see. We could use the iceberg metaphor. You know, there's this much iceberg and everything below the surface. That's what fighting is. You know, we can look back, oh, you know, Conor McGregor, blah, 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 Jake Paul, you know, Ben Askren. We can take somebody with 50 fights, but mostly what we don't see is what they're doing, how they're training, what they've learned, what's injured, what's not injured, where's their mind at. The most important things we have no access to. Let's see what else we got here. He could get inside with his experience, as you said, Robin, start digging the body. Paul, yeah. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but there are skills. There was a time, I'm sure, my friends that are high-level boxing historians, like Corey Erdman and friends like this, they could tell us specifically different eras in which boxers spent a lot of time training with wrestlers. And what happened, how it changed the game of boxing. Because all of that, wrestling isn't just taking you down. Wrestling is physically dominating and controlling the body of somebody who's trying not to be controlled. I can do that standing, you know, and there are many tools to it, not the least of which is fatigue. So I'm going to just, you know, that'll be part of, if I'm Ben Askren, it's all about making people boo. Tie him up, make him boo. You know, frustrate him, frustrate the more frustrated the audience is, the better it is for Ben Askren in all ways. So much composure, he likes to lay flat on the canvas like he did in the Jorge fight. Yeah, I mean, if this is, and I'm not trying to be harsh here, but this is what it is to take big risks. Everything Ben has in his life, the house he has, the wife he has, the life he has, the money he has, everything is a direct result of his risk-taking behavior. And when you take risks, among the things that will happen is you'll be laying on the canvas. There is 1 in 100, 1 in 20,000, 1 in 50,000, 1 in 100,000 people who decide that they're going to fight professionally that don't lose or fail, or, you know, you just do. This is part of it. Don't ever look at somebody's failure and try to convince yourself that is evidence it is better not to try. Please, nobody ever do that. Please never do that. Don't look at Ben Askren laying on the canvas and use that as evidence that it is better to stay in the middle and not take risks. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Anyone. Hey, what up, sir? Sensei Seth. I don't know if you're still with us, but because these may be old, but please follow my friend Sensei Seth. He's a hell of a dude and a great martial artist. That's it. It's over. It's just debate and conflict. I agree. Yeah, it is. News, all that shit, you know. MMA news, speculation, hot take narrative, conflict, controversy, hot take narrative. You don't have to engage in it. Everything good in my life currently has, not everything, you know, I'm married to my best friend. That's got nothing to do with what I'm about to say. But many great things in my life have to do with me deciding not to just get stuck in the typical stream of conversation. Knockout power in both hands, striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. Oh my God, what's next for this guy? Who winner gets the title shot? I don't give a fuck. And that applies to news, that applies to politics, that applies, it's all just narrative. The real world is beyond the narrative. The real shit, what's really happening is always beyond the narrative. The narrative and even our own opinions, our own biases are there to trap us. If you're just traveling along feeling like you're being pulled from Doritos ad to Budweiser ad to your job, you don't understand, you don't feel like you have a lot of control in your life, and that's, we all feel that at sometimes, and we all do. Some of it is break out of the narrative. Don't pick a side. Trump's not the best or the worst. COVID's not real or completely fake. Like, don't get sucked into that side, and you don't have to hate Jake Paul just because he's rich and famous, and you don't have to hate Ben Askren if you love Jake Paul. All the good shit is in the gray, the black and the white, the extremes, the 1 and the 0. You're gonna get, if you get trapped there, you wake up and you're 65 and you never fucking took any risks, you never learned anything, you never thought outside. Thinking outside the box, that is a bullshit concept. There's no fucking box. It's an illusion. If you believe it, it's there, but if you don't believe it, it ain't there. No way Jake does BKB. He needs to protect his baby face. Maybe, but think about it. Sometimes that natural thought, protect the moneymaker. If he had a giant scar like all across his face, all attention for Jake Paul in the context of how he's built his business, all attention is good attention. All results are good results. I was talking about this with my friend today, Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman I think he's a brilliant connoisseur of boxing. From the time I believe I'm younger than him, but maybe I was in my 20s and he was only in his 20s. Whenever I watched him, I always loved his stuff. He's a great broadcaster. Somewhere in the last 7 years, he's also realized whatever he says, he knows that fucking predictions are stupid. He knows it. We all know it. I mean, we don't all maybe, but they are. But you don't have to look very far to see that the science of forecasting, the greatest bettors on planet Earth who bet for 5 to 10 years never hit higher than 60%. It is impossible to pick these things. But what Max Kellerman understands, like Jake Paul, is no matter what he says, it's good. Right? If you say Conor McGregor will not land a meaningful punch, and he does, that's good. People freak out, they call you names, they make fun of you, all your shit grows. Right? If you say Tom Brady is going to be over the hill in 2 years and 4 years later, you were wrong, all your shit grows because he knows it's unpredictable. Some of the biggest shit that ever grew my shit was when I said Conor McGregor will knock out Floyd Mayweather tonight. All my shit grew. It all did. So, and I don't like playing that game. I'm more interested in how everything unfolds. I'm more interested in the grand scheme, learning different things and seeing the world for what it really is. That's my trip. I don't really like all the conflict and controversy. It just feels inauthentic to me, but it works. The reason people do it a lot is because they're rewarded for it. Why the fuck does anybody think Jake Paul says shit about somebody's wife? Because he's rewarded for it. It works. He'd stop doing it if it hurt him. He keeps doing it because it benefits him. This is why people do these things. Nobody successful tends to be stopping things that work and doing things that don't work. I shouldn't say that either, because I know that works and I don't want to do it. I would be more benefited, personally, my personal business would benefit more if I made a quick video that said, Jake Paul's gonna fucking slay this guy, he's got blah, 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 freaking out about it, and then put it up. And then Ben Askren defeated him. I would benefit more than going in the short run. I would probably make more money on my business, but in the long run, by not doing that, I've learned to think in so many different ways. I've realized we do this out of habit. We go, okay, who you got? Oh, I think, Ben Askren is too experienced of a guy. You take everything he's learned from wrestling and you apply it to fighting, whether he ties him up, yada, yada, yada. They cut to the other guy. They go, well, Jake Paul, this is a dynamite young man. We saw his performance in his first couple of fights. I think he's going to win. And then this guy says this thing. And then at the end, we do stuff. Twitter explodes, says, oh my God, I can't believe that guy said that thing. And our shit grows. And we learn fuck all. I learned nothing. I got trapped in the matrix, and now I repeat myself over and over until I'm 67, and then I retire, and then I never did anything. I didn't want to do that. So the harder route is, hey man, what else is going on? What if we talked about anything other than the obvious? Because the obvious seems like the only thing you can speak of. The mechanics of what started in television, now YouTube, all of these different environments, is these structures. Who you got? How about this guy striking? What about the wrestling? What about that guy's youth? What about fatigue? Like those parameters dominate our thinking. And we think that's thinking. Really, we've been shoehorned into having to have conversations that reward the machine. And then Twitter does a thing, and then it helps some of us and helps no, and then we get mad and fuck all that. Fuck all that. In MMA, Ben striking was only backed because opponents were scared about his takedowns and they had to. So now, again, excuse me, they had to be conservative in the striking because of the takedowns. Boxing, that's taken away. Well, just replace the word. No, it isn't. So first of all, I don't know how much high-level professional fighting you've done, and I don't mean to criticize. It's not intended to be rude, and I hope it isn't taken as rude. But if you have not done a lot, the reason you believe that is because you heard that. You heard it from places that you think is fairly solid to believe. That's not true. Literally, if all we do is replace the word takedown with tie up his arms, all of it still applies. If you throw a punch and I grab your body, grab your waist, grab your arms, grab your neck, grab your head, pull down on, all it is the same. Takedowns aren't the thing. That's the other thing. In MMA, we often, in the world of mixed martial arts, and I commentate all martial arts, MMA, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful to anybody, but MMA has our understanding, the way MMA is presented, has stunted our actual understanding of the realities of martial arts. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not trying to be controversial, but I suspect this might be. The people who call themselves hardcore may actually have less ability to think about the grander, some of the grander realities of fighting than the people that they call casual. Because when you call yourself, and it depends who calls what, but if you see yourself because you consume MMA Junkie, ESPN, whatever. And none of those are judgments. These are just the big ones. MMA fighting used to be very big. I don't know how big it is now. Any of these things, or even just watch commentators on television, you get a certain amount of information. If you believe that's all abject reality, you're getting trapped into a narrative that isn't actually true. So what you think you know is actually simply the limitations of what you've been told. And if you go back to the root, how and why did the commentator say this tonight? He only had 10 seconds and he had to say something. And he said this. But other than this, the thing he said, there were 700 other variables that were all at play. But I believe this. Like, we get narrowed and trapped down lines of thinking that you take a bunch of people who've never done martial arts and you get them talking on Twitter, they're pretty sure they know how and why and what actually happened in Dustin Poirier. Oh, low leg kicks, and then he's definitely hadn't been training enough, and his the distance management. They just say a bunch of shit that they heard commentators say. Commentators are professional fighters who fought their whole life but have the limitations of language and time and packaging and presentation and formula to force them to only be able to talk in certain ways, and those ways are not entirely truthful, and you believe them. Right? So, and then you think and we watch something, we think we know what it is. This is happening in all areas of our life. This is happening when we watch Fox or CNBC or MSNBC or CNN. I don't give a fuck. Same thing's happening. You're getting something that you're believing to be so, but which has had particular ways and particular reasons it has been structured that way. So do with that what you will. So we got more Khabib saying hello. I do love Khabib. I did a thing today with David Mullins, and we were talking about Poirier versus Khabib, and we were like, he just, honestly, it's difficult to say, but he just might be so good that when he's on, he's just too far ahead of everybody, and in particular areas that seems to be so. That's also been true for Ben Askren in other areas, but not in this area. But the things he learned, did, and experienced in all those other kinds of fighting are applicable here. Make this kid. You know how many people Ben Askren made tired until they couldn't hurt him anymore in his life? Like 20 in MMA, 23, like 16, 12, I don't know, lots. And then in wrestling, 100. You know, that's what he's done his whole life. Uh, um, it's funny when people want to be experts but never fought. How can I be a basketball expert if I never played? I'm cool with just being a fan. There's nothing wrong. It's just natural human behavior. When we learn things, we think that they're the thing. I look back at so I've commentated over, it's going to be between 500 and 600 shows. So that's 5 to 6,000 fights, plus the 9 I had, plus I was a manager as I was coming up to learn the business. So I managed 20 fighters. Then I was backstage doing interviews. I carried the spit bucket. I learned all those things. And then I've probably had, honestly, I'm going to say another 6,000 other types of combat that I've commentated. So whether that be organized like Left Way or bare knuckle boxing, or the World Wushu Championships, or Taekwondo and karate at the Pan American Games, I've commentated all of these things. And I'm fucking so proud of it. I'm so happy. It's so fun. It's the greatest thing ever. So we're at 10,000 fights now, 5 to 600 shows. And many of those were 20 fight shows, the Japanese ones that I commentated back in the day, in English. I don't speak Japanese. So all of those, when I look back to my first, when I only commentated 190 shows, I thought I was really good. I thought I knew a lot of stuff. Now I know how limited that was. I want to believe that about what I know now. I want in 5 years to look back at this and go, oh my God, I thought, thinking this way, I knew things. I didn't know anything. Because that's what it is to continue to grow. But that doesn't happen when you get channeled into a line of thinking. And that's one of the weaknesses of watching news or sports or many of these things. Is like they're formula based, they're ritualistic. Same thing over and over and over again. That's partly why we like them. But I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm into. It's not my trip. So, but it's natural. I think I know a lot about martial arts right now, like I said. But I hope in 10 years to look back and go, you only had a black belt in one martial art. You'd only had 9 fights. You didn't know. You hadn't, all the things that I don't know now, I want to one day know and then look back at now. So it's natural. It's human nature. But it is shocking and I have so many friends that work in fighting that are journalists or whatever. And when they start to kind of take that, the role of presenting like an analyst, when you don't fight, all you can really do is take things you heard analysts say and then parrot them. You see the things, you think you spot them, but all the information that's missing, you got to make all that up. That's what it is. Like what you want to, when you analyze things, is make up as little as possible. You'll never make up nothing. Your brain will have to make certain estimations, jumps, guesses, opinions. But the true analysis, television analysis, is give your opinion. Okay, I think Conor McGregor, that left hand man, that's so powerful. If he can just keep that space, really back him up, apply a lot of pressure, land that left hand a couple times, it's going to pay dividends. Well, Poirier, he's done so well at 155 pounds. He's defeated some of the best guys. We saw in that fight against Justin Gaethje. Blah, blah, blah. No. And then that's not analysis. That's conflicting opinions. That's arguing opinions. That's what TV is. That's what we do. I can't learn anything if I think I know something. So as soon as you think you know something, as soon as you formed an opinion, I hope this is something somebody takes from this and sees it as value. Some of you are literally sticking here because you're like, Robin's on a crazy rant. Robin's on a fucking weird trip today. And I think I am, but I'm enjoying it. But I hope you take this. We humans are fragile creatures. Ego, our natural ego, we all have them. It's not a knock. We shouldn't see it as a bad word. It's a part of us. Our egos are such that we have a bit of a fright in us, and we need to feel like some certainty, like we understand the world around us. So we easily jump to conclusions and form opinions. That's what we do. We look at something. Is that a dangerous thing? Is that a saber-toothed tiger? Is that something? Oh, look, is that food? Like this is how we've survived and how we've evolved. But this isn't super useful in today's world, because when we jump to an opinion, most of the time it is with the limited information we have. I see Donald Trump on TV. He says a thing. I either love him or I hate him, and I have an opinion. Now, whatever I see in the world will support that opinion. I'll look for only things that make me right. If I think, oh my God, Conor McGregor, he sucks. That guy's terrible. I'll find that information. If I say, Dustin Poirier, man, he can't. Conor knocked him out. I'll find that information, and it'll seem right, and I'll feel right. And whatever I don't know, my brain will sort of fill in the blanks. But if you've never fought, or if you've never done brain surgery, or you've never driven a car, you think you know what you're seeing. And you'll think even more if you hear people talk about it on TV. But you're missing most of the information, the real meaningful information. Most of it is only available within the experience. And the most common, all you got to do is grab 100 people who fought and stop them on their first night, win or lose. The most common thing is, what was it like? Oh my God, I can't even explain. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. Of course it isn't. Impossible to imagine. What you think you're imagining watching from a third person is not what it is from the first person. And those two people are fighting. Anyways, Jake Paul isn't a naturally gifted boxer by any means. So with some boxing training, can Ben close that striking gap at all? Ben has been boxing for 15 plus years. And to be an MMA fighter, you box. That guy too. And boxing is a combat sport that, amongst all the things you do, avoiding someone, moving away from them, moving towards them, getting a hold of them, grabbing them, pushing their body, moving them into different places, that's all relevant. Ben's been doing that since he was 7 or 5 or 3. He's very good. And our idea, if anybody says to you, Ben Askren is a terrible striker, understand they're repeating a narrative and taking it with no context. I mean, what's an ugly tree or a beautiful tree? Go out into the forest and find me one. It's what you think. Go out into the forest and get me a bucket of confidence. Like, a lot of these things are concepts that we think, terrible striker compared to what? Striking is contextual. Striking is a dynamic between two trained individuals. Ben Askren not being able to do what he wants against Robbie Lawler is very different than Ben Askren fighting me, or fighting you, or fighting, his grandfather, or fighting Jake Paul. They're all different. There's no such thing as good and bad when it comes to professional athletes. Those are, and I don't mean this to whoever said it, but there's a laziness if we start to just assume GSP is the greatest and this guy sucks. This guy's good at this, but bad at that. That is the two lowest levels of analysis that there are. You'll see this out of the world. One, using past performance to predict future success. This guy defeated this guy, and this guy is on a 7-fight winning streak. He's hot. He won't be able to be stopped. Tony Ferguson was on a 12-fight winning streak and then lost. How do you explain that? Because past performance is not an indication of future successes. So that's a low-level one. And another low-level one is, well, this guy's a great striker, but this guy's a good wrestler, but this guy's good at takedown defense, but this guy's bad at range management. Those are a list of opinions, categorized list of opinions based on nonsensical categories that are not easily definable. Those are the two lowest levels of analysis that are out there, often combined, put together. And often that's just what you see on TV. So then that's what you hear. So then you think that's real. Ben Askren, and I even saw it the other night. I remember, and this is no knock against whoever it was. Maybe it was Dan Cormier. Dan Cormier is brilliant. He's a world champion. He's a wrestling champion. He's a fighting champion. He's a great commentator. He's a great television person. And he said something about that Olympic wrestler, that Olympic gold medalist in wrestling when she was fighting, and about her striking. I forget her name. She fought Ronda Rousey. Anyways. My apologies. I almost had it for a second, but I have a bad thing with names. I think it's brain damage from fighting and living. But he was like, her striking, still work in progress, hasn't really come along. And I looked at online and maybe he didn't say it, maybe John Anik said it, maybe somebody else did. Didn't matter, no judgment. It's just what we do in television. And I remember thinking, she fought once in the last 2 years. I know she had a child, but she's probably going to train 15 hours a week of kickboxing or boxing or MMA fighting, or Sarah McMahon. Yes, thanks, Daniel. So we're going to call that 60 hours a month. So we're going to call that 700 hours a year. 60 hours a month is 720 hours a year, 2 years. So yes, so we've got 1,500 hours of striking that you haven't seen since last time. So why on earth would we say that? We say that because that's what we say. We say that because that's what television people say. That's what our boss said, and that's what the guy who came before us said. That's what the guy who commentated our fight said, and that's what we say. But it's not true. We don't know. We don't know how good Sarah McMahon's how much she's worked on it. We don't know and any fighter who's commentating, they know when they do 1,500 hours of work on a technique or a series of techniques or category of techniques, they know how much they improve. So make the assumption that that person has, or we can discuss this, right? But anyways, not a knock on anybody. It's just the structure, the problem, the challenges that we face, which is why, the more we get a chance to break away from these things, break away from the typical, break away from the narratives, break away from all those things, the better it is for us, because we get to think outside and then we can come up with new approaches, new ways to look at things. We realize how dated our thinking is. Jake Paul beat the crap out of a bare knuckle fighting champion who is 17-0 in MMA and sparring. Says who? I mean, if I'm that guy, I'm like, bullshit. And maybe he did. Maybe that guy, if that was true, maybe that guy was injured. Maybe that guy was blind in one eye. Maybe he caught a thumb, right? These things are not meaningful. These things, example, Henry Cejudo. First karate style fight. Yeah, I mean, they change constantly. These guys are changing. Ben's making bank for the match. Good for him, man. Good for him. I'm happy for these guys. I'm not mad at it. It's a novice fight between a novice boxer. Yes, Henry Cejudo. I mean, proves my point. My point doesn't need to be proven. This is the progress. This is the path. That's what I love about fighting. And this is what I've learned from fighting and analyzing fighting, is the goal is constant improvement. Learning, seeing what you can get better at, seeing where your weaknesses are, finding delight in setbacks so that they point you in the direction of how to get better. Askren was the first big champion from another organization that came to the UFC in modern times. Sadly, he was shot, not in prime form. Michael Chandler is the next. Right? What game plan would you give advice? Would you give Ben? We've discussed it. You might have just popped in. Close the distance, grab the arms, tire him out, grapple him, rip on him, make the crowd boo, slow it down, make it ugly. You want the crowd, if you're Ben Askren, you want the crowd booing ferociously all fight long. If the crowd's booing, you're doing what you want to do. Slow, it's boring, it's crappy. I think it would be brilliant. How would you defend Jake's early onslaught? I would close the distance and grab his arms over and over and over again. And if we get warned, we do it still. And if you get a point taken away, we still do it. We do it until the big wound up guy, frustrated guy, wrestling my whole life, not getting tired at all doing that. He's gonna get tired. That's what we do. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Robin, can you drop the StreamYard link so I can call in? I gotta actually go. I keep meaning to sign off. It's my wife texted me and it's snowing between here, my studio, and my home. And it's an hour 45 drive, so I gotta do that. This is a great logic. The more you know you don't know. 100% true. The more you study, the less certain you will become in a good way. You'll become certain about the process. You'll become certain about how to learn. You'll become certain about all the variations and the variables and the cyclic nature of life. You find all these things, but you will certainly become less certain. And it's weird. The people that, when I do my job in different arenas, Bellator, TSN, Letway, bare knuckle boxing, I get to do all these different things. The less personal fighting experience somebody has, the more sure they are about their prediction. Almost universally is an exaggeration. Quite common. That's a generalization, but a very common generalization. Thanks for the show. Wow, you analyzed in the best way I've seen. You're also the first one I've heard realizing that they are novice, and that's better than a standard boxing third fight. Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind, guys. A lot of nice stuff. A lot of nice comments from people. And I really appreciate it. This is fun for me. It really is. And I haven't got to do it enough. It's been a very slow January. I'm busy with all my other stuff. I'm working on some really cool new shit with Bellator. Really cool new shit. Next level shit. People like this analyzing outside, not being trapped in these narratives. I don't do it because I want to be different. I do it because to me, the longer I look at these things, the more, and I don't mean to criticize anyone. I'm not trying to. This is just a personal truth. The more ridiculous it all seems. striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. You know, it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup. You can maintain that distance, pop his jab out there, and he gets a lot of pressure coming in now. Shots to the body, you know, that's going to slow him down a little bit. Hey, you can't take too many more of those leg kicks. Yeah, they're going to really start compromising. I just can't fucking do that. It's not all real. It's all just the shit we say. And over time, you know, if you don't do that, your brain will have to find other things to do. And I'm on a good trip right now. I'm on a real good trip right now about all that. So enable super chat next time so we can throw you a buck. That's so cool. I don't know how to do that. I'm going to ask somebody. That's very thoughtful, man. Thanks. I don't know if like 600 people did that. I could take my wife on a trip. But I don't know. I don't need money right now. And I mean this in the most, everybody needs money. I don't hate money. I'm just not independently rich, but I am making more money doing things my way right now than I need to spend. And what it has done is given me the freedom to keep learning, thinking, studying, digging. And that is the ultimate freedom for me. And not charging people everything, not trying to sell shit all the time, not trying to sell CBD or fucking whey protein or whatever. That seems to be even more freeing. Would it help if I had another $600? Of course, I'm a person like everybody, but really, like, to me right now, the freedom is I'm on a level where I know I can learn way more. I'm at a point, at just the tipping point of a whole bunch of new learning, and that's what I'm about right now. I gotta go, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Please share this if you dug it. Instagram at Robin Black Martial Arts. Twitter at Robin Black MMA, TikTok at Robin Black Bink, YouTube, youtube.com/Robin Black. Like I said, I'm not trying to sell anything. If anyone wants a Bink t-shirt, they're at shoprobinblack.com. Thanks, everybody. It's been really fun. I'm definitely going to do this again. Next week, same time. Much love. And hopefully on the weekend. Much love. Back out.